Welcome to Taking Back Tomorrow, discovering your true identity, reclaiming your destiny, and breaking through to abundant living. My name is Ray Edwards, and I'm glad you're here. So what is this training series all about? What are we here for, really? It's very simple. This is a series about becoming truly successful. And I mean success in every sense of the word. I mean becoming successful in your finances, becoming successful in your relationships, in your health, in your physical body, in your wealth, in your money, in your finances, and in the spiritual sense of the word success. And obviously, this series has a spiritual underpinning. It's all based on spiritual principles because I think those are the only principles that count in the end. The story is commonplace of people who have ignored the spiritual part of their life and climbed the ladder of success only to reach the top all by themselves, lonely, in pain, broken, to discover that they leaned the ladder against the wrong wall. And so that's one of the things that I'm here to hopefully prevent happening to you. And let me just say right now that if you're thinking that this is about religion and that's a turnoff to you, well, you're in good company. I hate religion. Now that may be shocking to some of you. I urge you, don't go away just yet. Stick with me. But when I say religion, there's a good sense of religion. And the good sense of religion is the deep spiritual connection to your source, the place that you come from. And then there is something else that we call religion that is a whole other story. And that kind of religion is something that controls and manipulates and tries to beat people down and really cuts us off from our spiritual source. And that's the kind of religion that I'm talking about hating. So if you're not into religion, you're in a good place. This is a place you're going to feel right at home. I was raised on religion. I was brought up in an environment of people who loved me. I don't want you to get anything misconstrued here. My family loved me, and my family was full of spiritual believers, but it was also populated with people who taught religion, that controlling, manipulative thing that has left a bad taste in the mouths of so many people, that has burned people out on spiritual things, that has driven people away from their God, from their Creator, because they thought that religion was what He was all about, and nothing could be further from the truth. I remember growing up, going to church in the southeastern United States, and learning all sorts of things that I thought were kind of far out, but what really grabbed my attention was when I was told that the music that I was listening to was from the devil. Rock and roll music, born from the devil. And the church that I attended actually had a record burning ceremony where they took all the rock and roll records that the young people had and they threw them into a bonfire and burned them. And I began having some serious doubts about religion at that point. I felt like, if what religion means is hating groups of people because they don't agree with us, and if what it means is, censorship and restricting people's freedoms, then I didn't want any part of that. So I went into a period of real rebellion. And I think it's important that you know where I'm coming from. This is not going to be all about me and my story, this whole series, but I do believe it's important that you get where I'm coming from so you can understand the context of what I'm bringing you tonight. And I promise to get to how this relates to you. So I went into this period of rebellion where I did everything that I had been told I wasn't supposed to do, including sex, including drugs, and of course rock and roll. And just about everything you can think of that a person might do in a rebellious kind of lifestyle where they're going against the values that their family raised them with, I did those things. And I did them for a long time. And fact is, I was proud of it. I would tell people that I didn't believe in that religion stuff. It was hocus pocus. It was Santa Claus. It was fairy tales. And in fact, I was always a reasonably intelligent guy And I prided myself on being able to talk people into doubting their faith. And I'm not proud of that today, I can tell you, because I don't know what I cost people by doing it. But I do know that that's where I was. And one thing that I promised to be during this entire series is to be honest with you, even when it's embarrassing to me, like this is embarrassing to me. So, I went through this period of rebellion, and I really fell in love with things that were not very spiritual, just the things of the world. I had a career in the radio broadcasting business, and I had a lot of success doing that, and I had, in fact, what seemed like a perfect life. From the outside, I was making lots of money. I was married. I had a good marriage, making lots of money, had a fun job, perfect life. Or was it really? I experienced some real challenges inside my perfect life. Some really rough stuff. In fact, what most people don't know is that I don't know exactly when it started, but in the 1990s, probably the late 1990s, I began sinking into deeper and deeper into depression, clinical depression. And by the time the year 2001 rolled around and there was that great tragedy that we all know as 9/11, the airplanes crashing into the Twin Towers, I was still in the radio business, and I was, of course, immersed in the news because I ran radio stations, so I was deep inside the stories and it just saturated in all that coverage of those terrible events. And I lost someone in my family who died not long after that time. It's my grandfather, whom I respected and loved so deeply, and I just plunged into the depths of depression. It was so bad, in fact, that my wife and son had been discussing it among themselves, and finally I got a kind of a pseudo intervention. My wife said to me one evening when I came home from work, "Let's go for a walk, honey." And my wife, Lynn, is such a lovely person, and she is so courageous. She's always willing to have the tough conversations when she knows it's the right thing to do, even if she doesn't know exactly how it's going to turn out. But she looked me in the eye and she said, "You've got a problem and you've got to do something about it. We can't keep living like this. Your son and I are walking on eggshells around you. We never know which Ray is going to come home." And that was a splash of cold water in my face that drove me to the internet. First of all, I went to see what was up with this thing called depression, because my wife told me, she said, "I think you're depressed. You have depression and anxiety." And it was true. I mean, looking back, I can see it now, but I had to look it up on the internet and see all the symptoms of depression and anxiety, and I realized that I had all the classic symptoms. I was having panic attacks, where I thought I was having a heart attack, I thought I was dying. We made a few trips to the emergency room, where I underwent EKGs and the whole 9 yards, and was told that my heart was fine, but I knew something was wrong. So I went with my list of symptoms to my doctor, and I marched into the examining room and told him, "I think I have depression. I'd like you to prescribe some medicine for me, please." And he, to his credit, chuckled good-naturedly and said, "Why do you think you're depressed?" And I gave him my list of symptoms that I got from the internet, and he said, "Well, it sounds like you are depressed. I'll make a deal with you." He said, "What is your faith?" Well, that was a crazy question for a doctor to ask. Just crazy. And I said, well, I suppose if I had to give an answer, I would say that I was a Christian. Because by this time in my life, through a lot of circumstances I won't go into right now, I had begun coming back to the beliefs of my youth from when I was a child. And I had been actually casually reading the Bible, but not very much, not with any kind of regularity. Well, my doctor, when I told him that I supposed I was a Christian, and I assumed it was in name only, said, "Good, I will prescribe medication for you if you will go and see a counselor, and I'd like you to see a Christian counselor." And I said, "Okay, fine." So that's what I did. I went to see a Christian counselor, And our first counseling session was very interesting because he began asking me questions about my faith as well. Not talking to me about my depression or my anxiety, but asking me about my beliefs. And I told him quite frankly that I had grown up as a Christian, but I had really lost that faith, and I just couldn't bring myself to believe it, even though I kind of wanted to. And he said some words to me that were deeply embedded with wisdom. He said, "Well, do you know how faith comes to us, Ray?" And I actually remembered enough of my upbringing to know that, yes, I said, faith comes by hearing. It's a verse from the Bible, for those of you who don't know. And he said, "That's right." And he smiled, and he said, "And how does hearing come?" And I said, "By the Word." And he said, "So my prescription for you is to start reading your Bible." And I did. And something remarkable happened. God began to work on me in a very real, tangible way. And within a period of a very short few weeks, perhaps 2 or 3 months, I came off the medication completely, totally. My wife was not in favor of that maneuver. But I just knew that God had done something inside of me, and I came alive. It was like someone taking gauze off my eyes, and I was beginning to see the world the way I used to when I was young, like I was a child again. I was healed of depression. Completely drug-free, completely therapy-free by this time, completely healed by depression, by God. And I remember having a conversation with Lynn, who at that time she was not a believer, just like I was not a believer at that time. Or I guess it's more accurate to say believers who had walked away. And I had begun this journey back, but she had not. And she said, "What happened? How did you change? How long has it been since you've taken that medication?" And I told her it had been weeks. And she said, "How did that happen? How did that occur?" And I began to share with her. And through a process that took some time and, no pressure on my part, but she eventually came back to the Lord as well. I think this is a good time to give you a little background that I've never really talked about this publicly before. I didn't even really know I was going to talk about it tonight. But I'm going to. Because as I looked at the title of this next slide, I realized something. The title is Marked by a Miracle. My name is Ray Edwards. But that was not my name when I was born. When I was born, my last name was Miracle. It's true. It's a true story. My mom was married to a guy named Lonnie Ray Miracle. And that's who I was named after. And the two of them, a few years later, got divorced, and Mom remarried, and she married a guy named Patrick Edwards. And Pat Edwards adopted my brother and I. And so I'm blessed with two great fathers. But even though my name was changed at that age to Edwards, my original name was Miracle. So I guess I could say Miracle is my name. So I suppose I truly was marked by a miracle. But the miracle that I really had in mind to tell you about when I originally created this slide is something a little more strange and a little more bizarre. You see, what happened to me was after I was healed of clinical depression and anxiety, and I mean I haven't taken medication for those things since 2002. So it's a real healing. It really stuck. And it's a miracle. But after that happened, I really began to realize that there was something going on with this whole God business that was more real than I had ever known. And a real turning point in my life was marked by, as bizarre as this is going to sound, a visit to heaven. One night, while I was asleep, I can only tell you what I know happened, and you'll have to decide whether it makes any sense to you or not. I stopped breathing. And I became hyper aware of everything around me. And I left my body. I rose above my body. I could see my body. I was conscious of what was happening. And I was transported into a place that I instantly knew was heaven, wherever that is. And a number of things happened there that I'm not going to go into on this session. But I can tell you that there was singing like I had never heard before. And there was an incredible presence of joy in the air. Joy like I had never experienced in my life. Even to this day, even as I'm telling you this right now, even though this happened years ago, I'm getting chills across the back of my neck and down my shoulders, remembering. Because this experience was more real to me than anything that has ever happened before or ever happened since in my life. I simply cannot describe the depth of reality. It was as if everything that had happened in my life before this experience was an illusion, was a dream, and I had finally awakened from the dream. And I became so aware of the joy filling every cell of my being that I found myself flat on my face on what apparently was the ground, but it was different than any kind of ground I had ever known. And I remember having a conscious thought that I wasn't feeling joy, I was inside of it. I was permeated by it. It had become me and I had become it. And I realized that the stories that I had read of people prostrating themselves, falling flat on their face in the presence of God, that those stories weren't a description of people groveling before some greater power than themselves. It was because I just physically was not able to withstand, and a voice whispered in my ear and said, "He is passing near, and you could not have prepared yourself for this." And I became so exultant that I became part of the singing. And then I began to withdraw from the scene, and that same voice told me that it was time for me to return. And I was heartbroken. And I was told that I had things to do and that I had to go back. And I wept. And I awoke weeping for the grief of having to leave that place. And I've never been the same. Something happened to me that night. Some people will say that I just had a dream. Some people will say that I had some kind of oxygen deprivation episode. I don't care what people say because I know what happened. And I've never been the same. I knew that this was me on the other side of the looking glass, and it changed every single thing about my life. And I began to experience about this time in my life what I call a kingdom turnaround. I began to experience more and more success in my radio career. I didn't totally have a grasp of my own identity, who I was and what I was about, but I had a much better grasp than I ever had before. I didn't know how to process the experience that had happened to me in being taken to heaven and being in the presence of God, which is exactly what happened to me. I didn't know how to process it. I didn't know what to do with it. But it began showing up in my life. I began seeing things more clearly than I'd ever seen them before, like the future of my business and connections with people and career choices. And it was uncanny the way success seemed to accelerate toward me. I made a transition out of the radio business. Even though I had a great job, I had a 6-figure, very comfortable job in radio, very respected, very successful, on my way up, and I bailed out. And people in radio thought I was crazy because I started a copywriting career. And I reached a point in that career where I was getting paid insane amounts of money to write advertising copy for my clients and work with them on their marketing and promotions. In fact, I don't know how you're going to take this. You may find this more difficult to believe than me going to heaven. But the current rate that I get paid to write copy is $50,000 for a single piece of marketing copy or for working on a marketing campaign. That's just the truth of it. I've been blessed with famous clients, people like Tony Robbins, who's been my client a number of times. People like Jack Canfield and Mark Victor Hansen, the guys who created the Chicken Soup for the Soul enterprise, or like Robert Allen, the guy who wrote the Nothing Down book. So I've truly been blessed. But even more important than this, I've been taken on a journey of success and prosperity and, most importantly of all, of a deep, solid sense of who I am, what I was brought into the world to do, and what my mission here is, and who's on my side. And I'm going to explain more about that as we go forward. But an interesting thing occurred as all this other stuff was happening in my life. As I was enjoying more and more success and beginning to realize that it wasn't my dashing good looks or my incredible brilliance that was making me so successful. It was something else. Even as that happened, the economy melted down. You remember when things began, when the banks began collapsing and the real estate loans began to be called in and all that stuff began to happen. Well, I was right in the middle of it. And I saw a lot of my colleagues and friends and clients experiencing those things. And oddly enough, I had the opposite experience. And so did my clients. The clients who listened to what I advised them to do were prospering. In fact, right in the middle of the bank meltdown, I was working with one particular client on launching a new product of his, and it was a product that taught people how to invest in real estate. And the day that our launch began was the day in 2008 when the largest bank collapse in United States history occurred because of bad real estate loans. And yet, we finished the week with that product launch doing over $1 million in less than 7 days. And I tell you that not to brag or boast, but I share it with you to underline a point that not everybody is in trouble in this economy. In fact, some people are thriving. A number of my friends, clients, colleagues are thriving. We have continued to thrive. Why? Why is this? Why is it that some businesses, I have a friend who operates a retail business that does $30 million a year. And has his business been affected by the economy? Yes. Has it been hurt by the economy? No. Why is that so when other businesses are collapsing? Well, I believe it's because of the only success secret you really need to know. And if I have a success secret, this is it. And it's probably not such a secret. If you're on this webinar, you probably can already guess what I'm talking about. Maybe you read the piece that I wrote about this recently. But this one secret, I believe, is what has empowered all the success that I've enjoyed and the success of many of my friends, colleagues, and clients. It is what I refer to as the X factor, the thing we have in common that makes a difference in not just in our businesses, but in our lives. And once you know this secret, I believe you can experience the same phenomena. And the first realization that I think we need to come to when we discuss this topic is the fact that something that you probably already know, and that is that self-help doesn't help. Now, I've been a big consumer of self-help products. I mentioned Tony Robbins earlier. I probably have bought just about every single DVD or CD or audio set or book or tape that he ever made. Yes, I started buying his stuff back when it was on tape, so that ought to tell you something. And I bought other programs by Jim Rohn and Stephen Covey and Zig Ziglar and The list goes on and on. You name them, I probably bought from them. And what I discovered was these were only Band-Aids. They only provided temporary solutions to the problems that I was facing. I needed something more permanent, and I found that something more permanent. And I'm just going to warn you right now that I'm going to say some things tonight and through the remainder of these webinars that are going to challenge you, that are, for some people, they may even be offensive, but please know my heart on this. I am not out to offend you, regardless of what your beliefs are right now. Whether you're a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim, whether you're straight or gay, whether you're an atheist or an agnostic, I'm not trying to offend you and I'm not trying to make an argument with you. I'm simply sharing with you the experience of what I've seen for myself. And I'm asking you to see for yourself. It's as if I'm offering you a dish of food and I'm just saying taste it and see for yourself if it's good. If it is, then have some more. For crying out loud. I think that's going to be the experience that you're going to find to be true. I believe that when you receive this wisdom, not my wisdom, but it's wisdom, when you receive it, you will receive success in everything you do. And I mean everything. I don't mean this just in some ethereal sense. Like, oh, you'll just feel better about things. I mean, you'll actually experience serendipitous, amazing, astounding, unbelievable manifestations of success in your life. And when I say the word manifestations, I know you're probably, if you've been around some of my friends very long, you're going to be thinking about something called The Secret. It's a book and a movie that came out a few years ago. And one of the funny things about The Secret was they did a lot of teasing about how it could help you, but then, in my view, never actually told you what the secret was or how to get it or how to use it. Well, here's where this is different. I'm going to tell you exactly what I'm talking about. It's no tease. I'll tell you exactly how to get it, exactly how to receive it. And I can tell you this right now. It is the wisdom that always wins. Always. Always, 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 without exception, it always wins. I am more confident of that than I am of my own name or the fact that I'm sitting right here, right now, speaking into this microphone, talking to you. That's how confident I am about it. So, what exactly am I bringing to you in this series? I'm bringing keys that will unlock the doors of success for you in a way that I believe you've never seen before. And probably some of the people who are going to be most challenged by the things that I'm going to say are actually Christians, because if you've been raised an American Christian, you've probably been taught a lot of things that are counter to what I'm going to tell you tonight. And if that's the case, for you, I have the following advice. Try to set aside your preconceptions and just listen to what I have to share with you, and then do your homework and see for yourself if I'm not telling you the truth. Because I am telling you the truth. And I didn't come up with it. God did. So you can submit your arguments to Him. So what I'm sharing is what I call the 7 keys to effortless victory in life. Now, the tendency at this moment might be to feel that that's a bit of an overstatement. How can victory in life be effortless? Aren't we promised that we're going to have trials and troubles in life? Aren't we benefited by having challenges in life? Don't we have to, even when we have great faith, take some kind of step forward to make that faith into reality? Yes. I didn't say activityless. Activityless. That's not a word. It's probably why I can't say it. I didn't say victory without activity. But victory without effort? If we have a greater power than ourselves making the effort on our behalf, parting the sea in front of us, if you will, then to me that sounds like effortless victory. Think about the story in the Bible where Moses and the children of Israel, the nation of Israel, are being pursued by Pharaoh and his armies because the Israelites are leaving Egypt. They've escaped from bondage. And the Pharaoh's army is pursuing, and the nation of Israel is standing at the shores of the Red Sea, trapped between Pharaoh's army and the sea, between the devil and the deep blue sea, if you will. And God miraculously parts the waters and makes a dry path for Israel to walk across to get to the other side into victory. Effortless. All they had to do was walk it. That's what I'm talking about. So by now, I imagine that you've either decided to stick with me or you've hung up. You're gone. You said goodbye. So thank you for still being with me. I am deeply grateful for it. And I think you're going to be pleased with what we discover together next. Because if you're one of those Christians or American Christians, you've been raised in the church in America, the mainstream church, I've got news for you. We have been robbed. We've been robbed. Robbed of the power of what we believe. You know, probably our children could recite what our beliefs are. Children in the church could tell you, well, Jesus was the Son of God. A price had to be paid for sin in the world. And Jesus, who was also God, became a human being and died to pay the price. And then he rose from the dead to prove that he was more powerful than even the grave. And by doing that, he paid a way for us to be into heaven, for us to be in relationship with him. That is an amazing story that many Christians would say they believe. But if you start pressing most Christians today and you ask them, well, so what difference does Jesus actually make in your life? Other than being a good fire insurance policy to keep you out of hell, what difference does he make in your life? Well, in fact, don't even ask them. Just take a look at their lives. And what you'll find is what was discovered in a Barna research study a few years ago, and that in terms of quality of life, in terms of the core issues like marital fidelity, drug and alcohol abuse, levels of depression and anxiety, so-called Christians are no different than non-believers in terms of the statistics, in terms of the number of them that become divorced or cheat on their spouses or any of that other stuff. So there's no difference. And I'm sure we probably all know believers who say they're believers, and yet they're not seeing any of the fruit of that in their life, which leads me to one of the core questions that I was asking when I was coming back to being a believer in Jesus Christ. And that is, as I read the Bible, I noticed that there are things in the Bible called miracles. But they don't seem to happen anymore. That's what I thought at the time. That was my question. So here are miracles in the Bible. Jesus is healing blind people, restoring their sight. He's healing deaf people, restoring their hearing. He's causing lame people to walk. For goodness sakes, he's getting dead people to stand up and be alive again. And the apostles, the disciples who followed Jesus, did the same miracles. And not just them, but many others who were following Jesus at that time. So, my question is simple. Where are those miracles? Haven't you ever wondered that? And by the way, this does have a bearing on your success. So stick with me, because I think you're going to love where this is going. So the typical answer in the modern church is, well, those miracles stopped with the early disciples. Really? That's convenient. It begins to seem like a big scam, doesn't it? Because if you actually go back and read the Bible, where does it say that they would stop? Let me save you some research. It doesn't. It's not in there. There's one verse in the Bible, in the New Testament, that people who espouse this belief use to try and convince you that the Bible says that the miracles would stop. But that particular verse has nothing to do with that topic. So it's just not in there. So here's the fundamental question. It was for me, and that is simply this. If Jesus was really for real, then show me the miracles. Seems like a fair question, doesn't it? In fact, what did Jesus say we should believe about all this? What was the standard that he suggested that we hold? Well, he actually did make a statement about this. He said, and I'm quoting Jesus now, "And these signs will follow those who believe. In my name they will cast out demons. They will speak with new tongues. They will take up serpents. And if they drink anything deadly, it will by no means hurt them. They will lay hands on the sick, and they will recover." That's crazy talk. But that's what he said. So what do you do with that? Well, if you're a good, typical American Christian, you ignore it. Or you talk about this doctrine that was created by an organization, a religious organization that calls itself the church, to explain away why their gospel has no power. Because the Apostle Paul said in his writings that the gospel is not a gospel of words only, but of power. And he said that after explaining that the way he preached the gospel was he first performed miracles to demonstrate that he was exactly who he said he was. He was representing exactly who he said he represented. So as crazy as this verse sounds, I don't think you can just dispense with it. You can't just throw it away. You have to decide, did Jesus know what he was talking about or didn't he? It was the showstopper for me. Because while I had been moving closer and closer to God, and I knew that he had healed me of depression, I had to ask myself the question, Ray, do you really believe that what you believe is really real? I was at a turning point in my life where if it was really real, I was going to go all in. I was going to bet everything I had on Jesus. So I prayed a scary prayer. I can even remember where I was when I prayed this prayer. I was driving in my car on the Palouse Highway in Spokane, Washington, when I prayed to God and said, God, if this stuff is really real, show me. If you're really there and it's really real, show me for sure. And through a series of events, in the fall of 2008, my wife and I traveled to a place called Bethel Church in Redding, California. And I saw some pretty strange things there. I saw people behaving in strange ways, saying that they were touched somehow by God. I saw people who claimed they'd been healed of various diseases. I saw video of testimonies of people that had been healed by diseases. And I saw the beginnings of an unbroken chain of miracles. In fact, this led my family, my wife and my son and I, on what I now call the Miracle Tour of 2010. You see, there is something remarkable happening in the world, and it's not being covered by the news media. But it's a revival within the body of believers in Jesus Christ all over the world. And it's a revival in the sense that miracles are happening. They're real. I've seen them with my own eyes. I've seen people with one leg shorter than the other. I've seen the short leg grow out. I've had it happen at my own hands. I've seen people with hearing loss have their hearing restored. I've seen more miracles than I know how to list. This miracle tour was the time that we spent 3 months in our motorhome traveling the entire United States. We made a circle that was over 7,500 miles of travel in the summer of 2010. We visited Bethel Church in Redding again, and we saw miracles happen there. We visited the healing rooms of Sedona, Arizona, where Jesus is honored and healings take place. We visited the International Church of Las Vegas, Nevada. Jesus is doing miracles. He's healing people. He's restoring limbs and sight and hearing, and it's incredible. He's healing cancer there. We went to the International House of Prayer in Kansas City, where some of the most astounding and startling miracles that have happened took place. We visited Morning Star Church and All Nations Church, both in Fort Mill, South Carolina. Morning Star, under the leadership of Rick Joyner and Bob Jones, where again, miracles, signs, wonders are taking place all the time. Same thing with Mahesh and Bonnie Chavda at All Nations Church in Fort Mill. We visited the Toronto Airport Fellowship, where this great outpouring, some say, began. And we've seen incredible things. I'm just going to share some of my experiences because I've seen these things firsthand. I'm not telling you stories that I heard from other people. I've seen them myself. And I'm telling you because I want to create in you a sense of hope. I want to show you that there's a reality that's happening around you much bigger than anything you've ever imagined before. It's sort of like that scene in The Matrix. I'm giving you the choice to take the red pill or the blue pill. Once I tell you these things, you will have taken the red pill. You've either got to choose, are you going to swallow it, or are you going to go back to living the illusion that is the Matrix? That's the choice you're faced with. Miracles that I've seen. Well, first of all, there's my own healing, depression and anxiety. I can't tell you what a deep, dark place I was in. And medication helped, but it was the miracle healing of God's hand on my life that just took it away, like lifting a veil from my eyes. In the midst of all my studies and my reading and visiting these various sites of miracles and revival sites, I was on the phone with my mom, who had fallen and had taken a real severe blow to the head and had what's called a traumatic cataract form in her eye. And her doctor, she'd kept this from me. She didn't tell me how serious this injury was. She was living thousands of miles away at the time. But her doctor had told her that she had to go get cataract surgery or she was going to lose the vision in that eye. And she called me that day, and she was in tears, and she said, I haven't told you this, but this is what's going on. And on top of everything else, I haven't had my vision checked in a number of years, and I'm pretty sure my vision's gotten worse anyway, and I'm just really scared about this. And by this time, I had been convinced that God responds to our belief, and He heals, just like He did in the Bible, just like He did in the days of Jesus and Paul and Peter. So I just prayed for my mom over the phone. We prayed that her cataract would be healed and that her vision would actually have improved from the last time she had an eye doctor's visit. And she called me back a couple of days later to tell me the cataract was gone after her visit to the specialist, and her actual eyesight, her vision, had improved from the last time she'd seen the eye doctor. Firsthand, my 3-year-old niece, diagnosed with some sort of lung disease, which they thought was possibly cystic fibrosis. After prayer, she was taken to the doctor, given the tests, and they pronounced nothing wrong with her lungs. She's fine. My dad who had prostate cancer and was scheduled to go in for surgery, prayed for. The power of God moved in his life, and when he went in for his pre-surgical examination, he was told, well, we can't find anything to operate on. Most recently, within the last couple of weeks of the time of this moment, just a couple of weeks ago, I went with a team of students in a school where I teach here locally, and we went into the intensive care unit and prayed for a 14-year-old boy who was in a coma induced by meningitis. And before we left the hospital, he sat up in his bed in ICU and gave one of our team members a big hug and said, thank you for the prayer. And just in case you're wondering, it's not just healings that are happening either. We have plenty of examples of financial provision in the lives of believers. In fact, one of the most remarkable stories is as we were learning more and more about this topic and dealing with the skepticism that comes along with it, because I'll tell you, there is skepticism, there is a worry. I mean, you become concerned that, well, gosh, am I getting sucked into some kind of greediness or thinking that God's about money? But I know God's not about money. I know he's about taking care of his children, though. And we have some dear friends of ours who told us the craziest story. They said that they had been in need of a financial windfall because they needed some money. And they prayed to God that he would bless them financially just because he loved them. Because that was the truth that they had been getting more and more lately, that God just loved them. And so this is what they prayed for. And within a matter of days, they called us excited to tell us they had gotten what they described as a big check. They didn't tell us exactly how much, but they did reiterate several times, it was a big check. Well, we decided that that sounded like a good idea. So even though we weren't in financial dire straits, and I don't think they were in dire straits, I want to be clear about that, we just prayed that God would bless us with a big check just because he loved us. And we also prayed that he would do it in a way that we had nothing to do with the getting of the big check. It wasn't through our own self-effort. And sure enough, within 2 days, out of the blue, we got an unexpected, unearned, unworked for $1,000. Just like that. We began telling people this story and praying for them that they would experience the same thing. One lady just kept getting $600 checks. I think she got 3 in a row. In our own lives, we were at a point where we could use a little extra money. And out of the blue, we got a phone call from someone I hadn't heard from in quite a while with a copywriting job for me. And for a variety of reasons, I almost declined the job and told them, look, here's my fee. It's $50,000. And on top of everything else, you're going to have to wait 3 months before I can actually work on it. They wired us the $50,000. After we had prayed for provision from God, that God would just take care of us, this is what happened. Another person in my life was in need of a job, and we prayed for her, and she got 3 jobs. She had to pick the jobs. And it's not just money either that God blesses us with. We have some dear friends. I'm going to call them Frank and Christy. And Frank and Christy had been married for quite some time, and Frank messed up, and Frank had an affair. And Christy was deeply hurt. But we simply prayed that God would heal their marriage. And that's exactly what he did. And so now, over a year later, these two are more deeply in love than they ever were. And their marriage has been restored, and it's even been brought to a higher level than it was before. Look, I'm telling you these things because this is evidence that demands that you do something with it. If it's true, it should change your life. If there's a source where you can get relief from depression and anxiety and fear, and where you can get unending joy, and where you can be blessed financially, and you can be blessed in your health, and you can be blessed in your relationships, if that is true, you've got to do something with that. And if it's not true, then you can disregard it. But I'm telling you, it's true. And there's so much evidence that it's undeniable. You have to consciously be fighting for your own ignorance to deny the evidence. There's a worldwide ministry called Healing Rooms Ministries. Healing Rooms Ministries. They have over 1,700 locations around the globe. They have thousands upon thousands of cases of documented healings. And this is not a church, by the way. This is a place in each city where they exist where people from all sorts of churches, Catholics, Baptists, Presbyterians, non-denominationals, and people who don't go to church, they all come into the Healing Rooms location in their town, and they simply pray for the healing of people. They don't try to convince people to change their beliefs. They don't try to counsel them. They don't try to get them to go to church. They just pray that Jesus will heal the people, and Jesus shows up and does the work and heals people. Thousands upon thousands of documented healings all over the world. I mentioned Bethel Church in Redding, California. They have many more documented miracles that have happened both within their church and outside their church and all over the world, because they have an international school now. They have people that they've sent out all over the world taking this message of healing and restoration and God's love. And you can go to their website and see videos of these healings. It's incredible. It's astounding. If you're more of the scientific type, you might want to check out a book by Dr. Richard Kasdorf. He's a medical doctor. He has a book on Amazon called Real Miracles, in which he documents 10 cases of miracle healings. And he includes x-rays and MRIs and medical records, and it includes diseases like MS and cancer. It is absolutely a case of undeniable, miraculous provision by God in every way in the lives of people. So what in the world does this mean for you and me? It means we can say goodbye to powerless living. Goodbye to powerless Christianity. Certainly goodbye to powerless churchianity. Because, as I said, unfortunately, some of the most resistant people to this message are people in churches. I love them. I'm not criticizing them. Please hear me on this. If it's you, if you're in a church that doesn't believe these things, just look at the evidence. As I said earlier, taste and see. What if it's true? What if it's true that the miracles never stopped? That God wants to bless you in every way, physically, financially, emotionally, and spiritually? What if it's true that what Jesus came to tell us was not just about getting saved from hell? Well, that was part of it. But what if there was more? What if there was more? What if believing in the real Jesus, the Jesus that's in the Bible, when we don't let ourselves be influenced by teachings that were constructed to explain away powerlessness, what if it's true that that Jesus is a difference in our lives that makes a difference, that can heal marriages, that can heal relationships, and broken and sick bodies, and broken and sick spirits, and broken and sick bank accounts? What could you expect if that were the truth? How would your life be different? I think the difference would be astounding. I do more than think. I know. I'm living it. I'm right in the middle of it. I see it every day. It's what I live for now. It's why I completely turned my business upside down. Because I had a moment where I heard from God and He said, I just want you to sign everything over to me, including your name. And what that meant for me was I had to come out of the closet as a believer in Jesus Christ and say, look, not only am I a believer in Jesus, but I believe in the radical, crazy, rabble-rousing, troublemaking Jesus of the Bible. Did you ever realize that the only people Jesus got mad at in the Bible were the religious people? And that He hung out with the hookers and tax collectors and thieves? I'm just saying. So what I'm bringing to you in the series of webinars that you're part of, or the audio recordings if you're listening to them that way, are what I've identified as the 7 keys to effortless victory in life. And I'm going to briefly go over them, and then we're going to spend the following sessions over the next 3 weeks exploring each one of them in depth and giving you real hands-on tools that you can use to make this stuff a reality in your life. Because I don't want you to just hear about stories of things that I've experienced and other people have experienced. I want you to experience it for yourself. And then I want you to share it with people that you know and love. Imagine what that would be like. I can tell you, it's awesome. It's incredible. Okay, so what are the 7 keys anyway? Well, key number one is your true identity revealed. Did you know that God reveals in the Bible your true identity? And it's all good news. If you have been brought up or raised or taught in a tradition of Christianity that teaches you that you're just a dirty, no good, rotten, sinning sinner who keeps on sinning, I've got good news for you. That's not how Jesus sees you at all. If you have been brought up in a religious tradition that teaches you that you have to work really hard to be holy and get your act cleaned up and follow the 10 commandments, I got freedom for you. Because none of that is true. It's not true. Hallelujah. Or, to be more modern, cowabunga. You don't have to work at it anymore. You can lay that heavy load down. You don't have to worry whether you're enough. You are. You are. You are more than enough. You are worth everything to Him. That's why you're listening to my voice right now, so He could tell you that. So in our next upcoming session, we're going to get deep into what your true identity is. We'll explore who you really are, what God has in store for you, and I'll prove it to you. Key number 2. God has promised your good success. Now, first of all, we're going to start with talking about what success really is. What's a definition of success? And I'm not going to hedge here on this. You're not going to find out in this session that, oh, he didn't mean, what I thought he meant by success. I thought he meant I could pay off my credit cards and be out of debt and stop living hand to mouth. That is exactly what I mean. And more. It's that and more. It's not either or, it's that and more. And it's good success. Look, bad success can wreck your life. There is such a thing as bad success. Charlie Sheen is an example of bad success. He's a talented, gifted, wonderful actor who's really gone off the rails. And I'm not judging him. I'm praying for him. I love him. I love his talent. I love his vitality. I love his hunger for life. And I know what he's really hungry for. And I'm praying that he gets it. And that is freedom and release. In the name of Jesus. That's what I'm praying for Charlie Sheen. But if you're not ready for success, it can wreck you like it has wrecked Charlie. And like it has wrecked so many others. So you want good success, not bad success. You don't want success that's going to destroy you, but you do want success. And God has promised it to you. And if you've been raised in a tradition that tells you that that's not true, that money is the root of evil, I got good news for you. Money is not the root of all evil. That's not even in the Bible. And on top of that, God has promised that part of his inheritance that he has for you is wealth. It's crazy talk, I know, but it's true. I'm going to show you why it's true. Key number 3 to effortless victory in life. How to receive success in everything you do. Here's some of the best news of all. It was for me anyway, and that is you don't have to work so hard to get your success. You have to learn to receive it as it comes your way. And not just in spiritual matters, but in business matters, in relationship matters. You can start expecting good things to happen for you. Why? Because God has adopted you into his family. It says so in the Bible. I'll show you where. It says, because you are adopted into the family, you are a co-heir with Jesus. I didn't make that up. That's in the Bible. Bet you didn't know that. Once you understand that, you can begin to receive success in everything you do. Look, your success is not dependent upon your effort. It's not about right doing. It's about right believing. And I'm not talking about like positive thinking here. Positive thinking on its own will do diddly squat for you. It will not work. However, right believing in the right person positions you to receive the blessings that God has in store for you. And that is the truth. And you can prove it to yourself. Key number 4, the power of transformation in your tongue. What you say is so important. Both what you say when other people are listening and what you say when you're the only one listening. Or when you think you're the only one listening. The Bible actually says you have the power of life and death in your tongue. And you can literally transform the experience that you're having of life by what you speak. And it is about more than positive thinking. It's about more than affirmations. Affirmation is part of it. But affirmation has to be empowered by something more than just good thinking. When it's empowered by divinity, then yes, you can say to the mountain, move and be cast into the sea, and that's what will happen. How do I know that's true? Because Jesus said so. And once you understand the power that is in your tongue and how to release that power, your life will never be the same again. I know I sound over the top. I'm so excited for you. I've spent years and lots of money and lots of time and effort that I didn't have to spend so much effort, but I did. And even blood, sweat, and tears to to be in a place where I could receive all this. And I'm so excited for you because I just know that God's going to allow me to save you all that effort. Yeah. It was my lightning quick brain that held me back sometimes. But you don't have to go through that. Key number 5. We're going to unlock the key to abundant health. God wants you healthy. God wants you to live to a ripe old age. In fact, God wants you to live to be 120 years old. He promises that He'll renew the strength of the elderly. And we, Lynn, my wife and I, we've seen it proven out. We've seen far too much evidence of this stuff to ever believe anything other than it's absolutely true. Right now, there's someone listening to my voice who's on the verge of tears because you're feeling that maybe this is the answer that you've been praying for secretly. You've been so tormented by these problems that you've even thought of taking your own life to get out of your misery. And right now, your hope is stirred up and you're weeping because you're worried that what if it's not true? I'm telling you, it is true. Receive it. And for those who are not in that particular place, I believe that was for one person. But for those who are not in that particular place, but you're still in a place of pain and heartache and your hope's being stirred up, let it be. Let your hope be kindled up. Hope is a good thing. Get your hopes up. Because you're finally getting your hopes up in something that will perform, in someone who will perform. Not me. Not me. Jesus. I say His name proudly because He's done amazing things for me. And He continues to, and He will for you too. He loves you as much as He loves me. Key number 6 is the key to abundant wealth. Yes, wealth. I know that scares some folks. Some of you right now are scared, or you're upset with me, or you're perplexed, or you're just all Twitter-pated and you don't know why. Because you got all this baggage that's been given to you about how money's the root of evil. It's harder for a rich man to... easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to get into heaven. You've heard that one probably. Woe to the rich. They pierce themselves with many pangs. You've heard that one too. So you've been taught that money is bad and you shouldn't have any. You ever thought about this? If money is so bad, why are churches always asking you to give it to them? If money is so bad, why does your pastor cash his paycheck? Now hear me, I'm not condemning your pastor. I'm not. What I'm doing is I'm wrestling for freedom for believers from a burden that you've been given. And that burden is not knowing how to deal with money. We're going to spend a whole session on this, but I feel such a strong pull on this that I'm going to go ahead and give you a piece of this now because I feel like you can use it. There are two different mindsets that you've got to be aware of when it comes to money. Jesus spent a lot of time talking about money. He talked about money more than almost any other subject. Why? Because he knew there was peril. Not because money is bad, but because there's two mindsets that lurk around money, and you can run into one of the other of them and get trapped in it. One mindset is the poverty mindset. The poverty mindset has nothing to do with what's in your bank account or what's in your pocket. It has to do with what's in your heart, in your mind. And it's the feeling that there's never enough, that you're never going to have enough, that you're living hand to mouth, that other people are out to get you, that if one person wins, then you've got to lose, that the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. It's a zero-sum game. There's winners and losers. That's the poverty mindset. And most of America is in that poverty mindset. And Jesus tells us to avoid that. He says, don't worry about what you're going to eat or what you're going to wear. Because your Father in heaven knows you need these things. Seek first His kingdom, and these things will be given to you. Whoa, interesting. The other mindset is on the other side of the pendulum from the poverty mindset. It's the greed mindset, or Jesus refers to it as mammon. And we'll talk more about that when we come to this session. But for now, just think of it as the greed mindset. And the greed mindset is where you derive your self-worth from your possessions and getting more of them. The greed mindset is summarized in the bumper sticker, he who dies with the most toys wins. No, he who dies with the most toys is still dead. The greed mindset means that you have, in a very real way, made money the god of your life. So if you can avoid the greed mindset and avoid the poverty mindset, what do you have? You have a wealthy mindset. You understand the proper use of kingdom wealth. And it's to grow the kingdom. And we'll talk more about what all that means. But I'm just going to tell you flat out something that's going to make some people upset with me, and it's going to make some people ring off this call right now. Probably will cause some people to write bad things about me on the internet. Won't be the first time. It's okay. I forgive you in advance. It's okay to be rich. It's okay to work to get there. It's possible to enjoy being there and be in God's will. Yes, it is. I'll just let that soak in. I'm going to explain it when we get to that session. But just for now, hear me on this. It is possible. It's even what God wants for you and for His other children that you're put here to bless. And that leads us to key number 7. Blessed to be a blessing. Not just blessed in money, but blessed in other things as well. In good relationships, in emotional health, mental health, physical health, good success. Blessed in every way so that you can be a blessing. So those are the 7 keys that we're going to cover in the remainder of this series. Plus, we're going to delve into what I'm referring to as the master key. The master key is the key that unlocks everything. So you're just going to have to wait for that one. It's good. It's not what you're thinking, most likely. Maybe some of you already know what it is, but I think for the most part, it's not what you're thinking. The master key. I'm just looking through some of the questions that have come into the interface while I've been talking. I don't have a question and answer period built in, but I just want to make sure if somebody has a pressing question that I just feel moved to answer it. So Randall asks, he says, you may get to this, Ray, but what exactly prompted you to bring this to us at this point in time in your life? No, I think I've already answered that, but the real answer is God has done such amazing things for me and my family and for the people that we've been ministering to that I can't not bring it to you at this point in my life. I'm so full with all the things that God has given and done for us that I can't help but pour it out to others. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but that really is the answer. Bill says you didn't really get number 7. Well, let's go back and take a look at that. I see. Well, Bill, being blessed to be a blessing means that God doesn't bless us only to make us fat and happy. He wants us to be happy. He provides for us to be happy. But the ultimate way to receive more blessing is to pour out the blessings you have to other people. If you want to receive more money in your life, keep money moving. Keep giving it away. Keep investing it in other people, in other places in the kingdom. Bless other ministries, other business people, students, people in your life, and you'll be blessed. It's not a vending machine, though. I want to be clear about that. And it may seem confusing, but we will cover it more in more detail. So, good question. Okay. As we're getting near the end of tonight's session, I just want to go over how you can get the most benefit out of these sessions. So there's a few tips that I've picked up along the way that I think will be helpful to you. If more questions come in, I'm going to have a little time, so I'll answer. If you've got questions for me, you want to ask them, go ahead. Just type them in the question interface, and I'll answer them before we finish up tonight. So getting the most benefit, here's what I recommend. I recommend you go through this course 3 times. Now, I want to stress again that you can go through this course entirely free. You're on this webinar for free, which means you're already signed up for the remaining 5 webinars. Those are free also. You can record them if you want to save money and you've got the time and equipment to do that. That's perfectly fine. You can even share the recordings. Just I ask that you don't alter the recordings and you don't charge for them. So we also offer recordings for a small fee. We'll take care of the recordings for you. I'll tell you more about that again in a few minutes in case you missed it at the beginning. But anyway, whether you record it yourself or whether you opt to get the recordings from us, go through the course 3 times is what I suggest. Why 3 times? I suggest you do it the first time just to get the main ideas, just to let it soak in. And you're going to have questions come up, just like folks have questions tonight, and I'm going to answer those after we finish up here in just a couple of minutes. So you can type your questions in if you want to, and I'll do my best to answer them. So the first time, you just want to get the main ideas. The second time, you want to take notes. And, you're going to have further questions and so forth, so you want to write those things down. And the third time, you want to take action. You want to go through it the third time with the view to what things can I take action on immediately that are part of this course. Now, this doesn't mean, by the way, that you can't take action the first time around. You certainly can. If you feel moved to do that, then by all means, please do. But this is just a suggestion. I think we learn best by repetition. I know I do. I've got certain teachings and certain programs that I've listened to over and over and over again for this very reason. So I suggest that you do the same. All right? So how else can you get the most benefit out of this course? Well, after tonight, each of our sessions will contain a section called the Key Tactics section. It's where I'm going to bullet point out for you the things that I think are the takeaways. Now, you may come up with different takeaways. You may experience things and hear things that I didn't even hear. But I'm going to give you what I think the takeaways are that you can put into action immediately. Plus, you should do the exercises. After tonight, each session that we do will include some exercises, some homework, if you will, things for you to do, because my goal for you, my outcome for you is once you've been through this program, your life will be changed. You will never be the same again. In fact, that's my goal for you after tonight. I know that for some, your eyes have already been opened to a new and bigger reality. Not because I'm so brilliant, but because God is. He arranged for us to be here together. And finally, only believe. It's a quote from Jesus. Only believe. You know, there's a chance that you think that I'm up to something here. It's not getting rich off of you. I have sold courses and trainings online for a couple $1,000s that are less content filled than this one. But this is the most important thing I've ever taught. And it's free. And I am up to something. What I'm up to is changing your life. That's what I'm up to. What I'm up to is suggesting to you, what if this is the answer to what you've been praying for? Only believe and see what happens. So before we get to questions, I'm going to pray for you. You don't even have to bow your head and close your eyes if you don't want to, because I'm not watching you. Father, I thank you for these people, each and every one of them who've joined me tonight to learn about what you have in store for them, about how good you are, about how you got the answer to every problem that they face. In fact, you don't have the answer, you are the answer. I thank you that the answer is not religion. I thank you that it's not about doing things the way they've always been done. And I thank you that you do amazing, unexpected, and weird things to show us how much you love us. And I ask that for every person listening to my voice right now, and those who will listen to the recordings, that you would even at this moment begin to work in their life in a way that demonstrates your kingdom and your love for them. That you would bring them unexpected favor, that some would be healed just as they're listening to this teaching. That some would be blessed financially. That they would get checks in the mail or a promotion or an unexpected refund or rebate or award or inheritances. That you would, in some unfathomable way, start repairing a relationship. And that each person who's part of this class will have reason to say, wow, what Ray talked about was real. God really did something in my life. And that they would come to know you better because of that and know your love for them and how much, how furiously you love them. I ask all of this in the name of Jesus. That's it for tonight. Thank you for being here. God bless you richly, surprisingly, wildly, crazily, in ways that make you scratch your head and say, wow, what was that all about? I'll tell you what it was about. It's about He loves you. That's what it was about. Be blessed.